Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Japan Society. My name is Miwako Tezuka. I am director of Japan Society Gallery. Am I the only one who's seeing cats everywhere? Around the corner, wherever I turn. I can't seem to be not able to get away from them. So we're very, very happy to bring to you this spring the special exhibition, Life of Cats, selections from the Hiraki Ukiyo-e Collection. This exhibition features over 130 works of art, which all of them have cats in it. So I hope you were all able to see the exhibition. As we have announced in many, many places, we are having a full rotation at the midpoint of this exhibition. So the first rotation will end on April 26th, and the second rotation will start on April 29th. So after you see the first rotation, please do come back to take a look at the second rotation, where you will be able to encounter another 45 brand new works in the show. This exhibition has a series of really fun programs for you. And tonight we have a wonderful and perfect person to provide a lecture for us, Sarah Thompson from Boston Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. But if you take a look at the program, you also notice that we have other programs coming up in next few months. Just two, which I would like to bring your attention to. One is on May 8th. We have a book club focusing on the masterpiece novel by Natsume Soseki, written in early 20th century, entitled I Am a Cat. So please sign up for that. The space is limited. And on May 16th, Saturday, we also have Saturday Craft Day. This is really special. It's a make your own beckoning cats, manekineko workshops. So please also sign up for this. We have 2 sessions for that. But tonight is a really special occasion where we welcome Sarah E. Thompson, Assistant Curator for Japanese Prints at Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And she is going to talk about 3 different aspects of cats and how they're depicted in Japanese art. One is the elegant cat. The other is the predatory cat. And lastly, but not least, cat as the comical animal. So all these elements that you see in the exhibition, she will unpack for you tonight. And this exhibition, or this program tonight is generously supported by the International Fine Print Dealers Association. So thank you very much for your continuing support, Michelle. I'll give you Sarah's background. Sarah Thompson received Bachelor of Fine Arts from Harvard University and PhD from Columbia University. She taught Japanese and Asian art history at Vassar College, Oberlin College, and the University of Oregon, and curated several exhibitions of Japanese prints, most notably Undercurrents in the Floating World, Censorship and Japanese Prints at the Asia Society in New York in 1991. And she joined MFA Boston in 2004. She is now supervising the Japanese Print Access and Documentation Project, and this is quite an ambitious project, where their ultimate goal is to photograph and catalog all 50,000 Japanese prints in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts Boston. And they have finished, I guess, photographing all the images, but curators, including Sarah, are hard at work cataloging them. So let's hope that they finish the project very soon. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Sarah Thompson.
Well, thank you, Miwako, for that nice introduction. And thanks so much to all of you. This is a great audience, and I know you had to brave the holiday crowds to get here, as I did also, so it took some doing. Thank you. as we work through those 50,000 plus prints in Boston, as a cat lover, I, of course, have been tagging as I go along every time I see one that has a cat in it. There are a few other things that I've marked in terms of subject matter. It's cats are not the only thing for possible future exhibitions and so forth and so on. But cats are definitely one of them, and I was amazed to find that I had over 300 things in my cat package. So I picked and chose for this talk. I hadn't yet seen the exhibition when I put the talk together. I just saw the finished, gorgeous show for the first time a couple of hours ago. But so there is an interesting overlap. You'll see some things that are also here in real life upstairs, and some things that aren't. And I'll work through the loosely connected 3 topics that Miwako told you about. So the first thing that I found, the earliest example that I could find in the Boston collection of something that could reasonably be called ukiyo-e cats, is a book illustration from 1694 by Hishikawa Moronobu, who is considered to be the first ukiyo-e artist. I assume probably this term is very familiar to most, if not all of you, but the art of the popular culture in especially 18th and 19th century Japan, but as you see, it starts in the late 17th century. Strongly associated with woodblock prints, but also includes book illustrations and paintings, and all of those things you will see upstairs. And many of them have cats in them. So this, as I said, is the earliest example I could find. It's from a picture book of animals, and among the animals are these rather wonderful cats. But beautiful, elegant, sexy cats as fashion accessories for beautiful women turn up quite often. Lots of examples in the show. Just to show you some early ones from the 1710s, these are hand-colored prints of lovely ladies with cats. The one on the left is by Okumura Masanobu, and the cat is on a leash. Cats in Japan tended to be considered rather special and valuable, and to be kept on leashes, and to be basically indoor animals. So it's kind of the opposite of what you expect compared to here and now, where dogs are on leashes and cats run around, but in Edo period Japan, dogs ran around and cats were on leashes. So here is the cat on a leash, and the beautiful courtesan turning to look at the cat. This may possibly be a parody of a classical theme that we'll talk about shortly. But then again, it may just be a courtesan with a cat. Another lovely lady in an indoor scene on the right, and she is sitting on a kotatsu. Cats love kotatsu, and there are lots and lots and lots of kotatsu in the cat prints. Again, and most of you probably know what a kotatsu is, but it is basically a small table with a quilt over it that reaches all the way down to the floor and some sort of a heater under it. When I was a student in Japan in the 70s, I had a kotatsu, and in my case, it was an infrared bulb screwed to the underside of the little table. But in the Edo period, there would be something like a ceramic bowl with hot coals in it that you would have under the kotatsu. And you sit, of course, you're sitting on the tatami mats, perhaps with a cushion also, and tuck the quilt around you. It's nice and cozy and very pleasant. And cats, of course, love this. So you frequently see cats on kotatsu. Every now and then one of them even crawls under, but usually they sit on top. So this is a theme that will come up again and again. Now here is Harunobu once again. It's interesting, there are gaps in the cat record that I think have to do with whether or not cats were fashionable at a given time, and also perhaps with whether or not certain artists really liked cats. Happily for us, a number of great artists have been very fond of cats, and one of them was Harunobu, this first artist to design prints that were done in color. In my opinion, I think often the presence of a cat is a little signal that something of a romantic or sexual nature is going on. It's, cats in love. Now, these cats are just sitting curled up. They look very, very quiet and demure. It almost could be the same cat. And who knows, perhaps it's a portrait of Harunobu's own cat, a little striped cat with a long tail curled up in a ball, in this case on top of the kotatsu. But notice what's going on under the kotatsu. The young man has his feet under it, but the young woman is tickling him. The poem does not give us any clues. It has nothing to do with feet or cats. It's about the narcissus flowers that you see in the vase on the veranda. But there are these narrative elements that don't necessarily relate to the poem. Definitely a narrative element here on the left, and a somewhat suggestive one. It's a young man visiting a young woman. These are men. They're basically teenagers. They have not had the full adulthood ceremony when the front of the head would be shaved, but clearly are physically adult. And involved with these young women. The black form is a lacquered form that is used to stretch cotton or silk floss to make batting for quilts. This was an occupation, a rather nice, genteel occupation. However, it was well known that this was a front for unlicensed prostitution. So, they may be making some sort of arrangement for things to do later. And in my opinion, the cat is hinting at that possibility. What about the cat's? Its presence. The cat is. Well, I think so. You need not agree. No, well, not in this case, although we'll get to that. No, in this case, I think it's the presence of the cat. I think cats are just sexy animals. Now, you don't have to agree. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and sometimes a cat is just a cat. Well, certainly, again, there's another little story here on the left. This is an actual person. The young woman is Osen, the famous waitress at a local tea shop, who was supposed to be one of the prettiest girls in Edo. Once again, the little poem at the top has nothing to do with what you see in the scene. It's about maple leaves and frustrated love. But the young man is holding a cute little cat in his lap, and Osen is teasing the cat with the end of her obi. And it is my opinion that she is also symbolically teasing the young man. But once again, you can read into it what you like. There's also a narrative element on the right, but in this case, it's not sexual. This touches on the theme of cats as dangerous predators. Here we have a pretty young woman, but she is in her role as big sister. And she is trying to stop her two little brothers from doing something very rash. They are attempting to introduce the older boy's pet, which is a tiny little mouse, to the younger boy's pet, which is a very excited cat. And I think the sister is rushing in to stop a potential tragedy in the making. Now we skip ahead again chronologically. We're now in the 1890s, and once again looking at beautiful, elegant cats who are the pets of top-ranked courtesans. These women are courtesans, well, partly because they're actually identified. Their names are on the prints, and they have the many, many hairpins. This is Utamaro on the left, Eisho on the right. Utamaro is certainly by far the better draftsman. He really draws superbly. That's a very nice cat. He does the anatomy of both the cat and the woman very beautifully, very sensual. But I have to admit, even though the drawing is a bit odd, I really love the one on the right with the cat doing its cat thing and reaching up to play with those multiple hairpins. You know, if you're a courtesan and you're cuddling your kitty, this is exactly the sort of thing that's likely to happen. You'll notice that both of these cats, like most of the cats that we see in the prints, have red collars and sometimes leashes. The collars are slightly padded. They appear to be made of little tubes of cloth with just a bit of stuffing and then tied around the kitty's neck. Sometimes there's also a bell. So, beautiful women with cats with the big hair of the 90s. Two more images from the same period. This is Utamaro once again on the left. Now, the two women here are not courtesans, but the image on the left is a little bit suggestive. She is relaxing at home. She's doing her sewing. There are the scissors, and here is a little sewing chest with a pincushion built in on top of it. And so she's trying to fold a piece of cloth, but her kitten is getting in the way. Utamaro loved visual effects, peeping and looking through things. And so he's playing with the transparent cloth here. We see a bit of the woman's anatomy, but through the transparent cloth, and then the kitten playing with it also down at the bottom. Notice that this is a Japanese bobtail. Some of the cats have long tails, and some of them have those short tails that are actually considered a breed of Japanese cats today. This is another print that I'm very fond of on the right, Kunimasa. Once again, it's a kotatsu, that nice, warm, heated table, and a little cat is curled up on top of it, and the young woman, who in this case is a nice young lady from a wealthy family, and she is communing with her cat. So I have done things like that myself and seen other people do it. Also, the cat, I may add, is embossed. So once again, there's a beautiful detail that is hard to show in a photograph, but that you can see if you see the actual print. This is a still later, 1820s or 30s, an artist, Sarakage, who is not well known, but I like this print very much. The title is The Pride of Edo, an Assortment of Beauties. Now, I think he was referring to the three young women, but I think of the cat as a beauty that Edo should be proud of also. I believe it is New Year's Day. We have here the Adonis flowers and the plum. Those are New Year decorations. I think it's maybe the afternoon after they've done their visiting and official celebrating, and now they're just relaxing. I think probably this is a young married woman and her two sisters-in-law who are not married yet. They're all hanging out together. And New Year was when the new books came out. So the young woman here at the right has been reading the latest installments of Inaka Genji, the great bestseller that was a parody of the tale of Genji. But you know what happens if you have a cat and you like to read. The cat will come and sit on your books. And so the cat has come and sat on her books, but she doesn't seem too unhappy about it, and she's willing to cuddle the cat instead of reading. And this is the most self-satisfied cat I think I've ever seen in a print. That is a very happy cat. Once again, a detail that doesn't show very well in the photograph, but the cat's face has the fur done in embossing. And this was rather clever of the publisher. The embossing, of course, was a rather expensive, special process. So I think they compromised. You know, it would make the print more attractive and would make it sell well, but would it sell sufficiently well to make it worth the trouble of spending the money to have the extra feature? Well, they compromised and did just the face, but not the body of the cat. So you get some of that lovely effect, but still at a reasonable cost. Cats become so strongly associated with beautiful women that sometimes the cat, and in this case, the cat implies not sex, although that's part of it, but it implies the presence of the woman. She probably is there, but standing behind the screen. This gray part here, this is the edge of a folding screen. That's the typical pattern that's on the back of screens. And that is her cat. It is a courtesan's cat. This window is in the Yoshiwara. which was kind of on the edge of town, and looking out over these fields in Asakusa. There's a parade going along in connection with the Torinomachi festival, and presumably this courtesan who owns the cat has been to the festival, and she has come back. She has just washed her face. There's a little bowl of water and a towel, and she bought at the festival some hairpins in the shape of rakes, which are the lucky symbol that you get. You rake in good luck with those rakes. You still sometimes get rakes at shrines in Japan. So the cat is implying that its mistress is also there. You see the cat, we know that she's there. This is the MFA's best of this, and I have to say, the one upstairs is nicer than ours. I am so jealous. It's a beautiful first edition. There's a little bit of shading on the cat that is not on ours, so do have a good look at this. This is probably one, well, I don't know if it's the most, certainly one of the most famous cat images in ukiyo-e prints from that very super famous series, the 100 Famous Views of Edo. Now, even though cats are strongly associated with women, of course, in real life, cats can be good pets for men also. I'm very, very fond of this print because it shows a cat who is the pet of a man, specifically a kabuki actor. This is an extremely interesting series, just from the time when photography was starting to give serious competition to woodblock prints. This is not a photograph, but it is something that was in some sense real and immediate and involved the subject's actual presence. It is a silhouette. So presumably the kabuki actors who are shown in this series actually did sit in profile in front of a screen with a light behind them for the artist to sketch their outlines. At least that is the premise of this series. And then there's a picture of the actor in the conventional exaggerated style up at the top, so you can compare the way that they're drawn in typical ukiyo-e style to what they actually looked like judging by their profiles. What I love about this one is, of course, he did not only the actor, but the actor's cat. And the actor's cat is not one of those beautiful little pampered darlings that we've been seeing with the courtesans. This is a scraggly, battered old tomcat who's been in a lot of fights. But, you know, he's really a very appropriate pet for a man who's seen a certain amount of life himself. So I really like this one, even though it's kind of different from the usual cat that we see in prints. Cats can be fashion. And both of these prints, I noticed, are in the show upstairs, so you can see them for yourself. Here, this is one of those designs of a cat and butterflies, although the cat is not chasing the butterflies, but they're in the picture together. Again, a very beautiful, elegant cat in the courtesan portrait by Eisen. Then Kuniyoshi, the cat-loving artist, that looks at first glance like, you know, a typical, warrior print, in this case, not a samurai, but a macho man about town, with a daring kimono pattern of skulls. But look at the skulls. They're made up of little cat figures. So cats all clumped together to make skulls. Very, very witty. I have no idea whether there were really fabric designs like that or whether it was all in Kuniyoshi's imagination. Cats can be jewelry, fashion accessories for both sexes. This is a hairpin. You really have to look very carefully. It's quite small in the print. And again, you see this print by Kunisada upstairs. Netsuke, in my opinion, are really jewelry for men. You know what netsuke are, the miniature sculptures that hold things like your pipe case and tobacco pouch in place, dangling from your belt. This very interesting print is actually it's a shinie, a memorial portrait for Kuniyoshi, the great cat-loving artist, and he is shown in travel clothes going on a journey to the next world. This is very common in the memorial prints. And I have no idea whether in real life Kuniyoshi actually did own cat-shaped netsuke, but the artist who was one of his pupils has given him one in this posthumous portrait. Now, also on the theme of elegant cats, there is one particular extremely elegant cat who comes up again and again and again in prints, and that is Prince Genji's wife's cat. It always reminds me, people as old as I am may remember the joke about Lincoln's doctor's dog, which was the book that supposedly would be a surefire bestseller if anybody ever wrote it, because when I was a child, people supposedly wanted to read books about Lincoln and doctors and dogs. But this is Genji's wife's cat. So, the tale of Genji, beautiful women and cats. And there are lots, and this was a combo that people liked in ukiyo-e because there are lots of pictures of the third princess. That is her name. She was one of Genji's later wives. He actually really wasn't that interested in her, which was part of the problem. But he kind of had to take her because her father asked him to marry her, and her father was the emperor. So this princess became, even though she was much younger than he was, she became the wife of the shining Genji, and moved into his large house along with the many other women who lived there. And she had a pet cat. So here are two different prints by Harunobu. That's a Benizuri-e on the left. That is actually just before full-color printing. So it's a very beautiful print with only 3 colors in addition to the black. Harunobu was so skillful at that I think that was probably why he was the artist who was chosen to do the designs in full color. And there you see a slightly later print of the same subject in full color. So she's wearing the costume, she's wearing Harunobu's 1760s version of the costume of the Heian period. This is not completely authentic. It's sort of like historical movies that you can always date by the actress's makeup. You can see what decade they were made in, even when they're supposed to be, the 1580s or whatever. But this is Harunobu's version. So a long hair down to the floor, although Harunobu, to make his girls look pretty by 1760 standards, has puffed the hair out just a little bit at the sides, not how they did it in the Heian period. They shaved their eyebrows and painted puffy eyebrows high on the forehead. So he puts the puffy eyebrows in, but lets them keep their natural eyebrows so it doesn't look too strange. But then multi-layered garments, and these robes were still worn at the imperial court in his day, and actually even now on formal occasions you will see this. But the cat is on a leash, that's important. And in this case, you notice the bamboo blind in the background. Here are 2 more versions. This is Kiyonaga, much more authentic. That's what Heian hair really looks like. You notice it's longer than the woman is tall, which was the great standard of beauty. You can barely see the cat, but there is a tiny little cat playing in the hem of her skirt down by the ends of the hair. And then Utamaro has done a parody of it. He put the real thing in the top corner so you would see what he was joking about. And then here's a modern girl with a dog on a leash. But instead of the bamboo blind, she has a screen with a bamboo section in it. Why is the bamboo blind important? On the left, the print by Kunisada shows the actual incident from the tale of Genji, chapter, I believe it's 35. Wakana is the name of the chapter. And what happens is that Prince Genji has this huge house with various beautiful women living in different sections of it. Since it was acceptable for a nobleman in his day to have official relationships with various women, although there would be one top-ranked one who was the wife, and that is this young princess. But it was the custom in a private home that high-ranking women were not supposed to be seen by any man outside the family. They could talk to men, but they had to have something like a screen or a bamboo curtain or a cloth curtain, something in between. They were not supposed to be seen. That was very improper. At the imperial court, women could run around openly and speak to men and interact with them without having to hide behind things, but it was the custom in private homes that men were not supposed to see women. This led to all kinds of romantic complications, as you can imagine. Often people wind up getting involved with each other without quite knowing, at least the man doesn't know what the woman really looks like. And Genji himself in his younger days had some strange entanglements with women that he might not have picked if he'd gotten a good look at them before he became involved. But at any rate, Genji's son has a group of his friends over to play football in the garden. It's more like, it's more sort of kickball or foosball. You kicked the ball around and didn't let it touch the ground, and it was something fairly sedate that you could do in your good clothes. But Genji's son has his friends over, and they're playing in the garden. The women are watching them through the bamboo blinds. The women can look at the men, but the men are not allowed to see the women. But disaster strikes. The princess's cat is frightened by another cat, and it runs out onto the porch. Its leash catches in the bamboo blind. The bamboo blind is pulled aside, and a young man sees the young woman. Very briefly, you can imagine. But he falls hopelessly in love with her and pines away based on that glimpse that he got. Now, this is Kunisada in the 1840s, I think really trying to be faithful to the story, but Edo period people just didn't get it. This whole business about how women were not supposed to be seen is something that the Edo period people, I think, really didn't quite understand. So, he has faithfully got the young men playing. There's the ball up in the air, playing in the garden. Here is the young woman. Somewhere in there is a cat, although I'm having trouble spotting it. And you can see the blind pulled aside. But really, she is standing half out on the porch, which a proper hand lady certainly would not have done. So I think something is not quite completely understanding. But back to the original tale of Genji, the young man who's been smitten by the sight of this woman is not able to do anything about it immediately, but he contrives actually to get hold of her cat. And so for a chapter or so, he lavishes his devotion on the cat. This is a threat by Kuniyoshi. It is ostensibly something completely different. It is a poem from a Japanese issue series, the 100 poems. But the poem is about yearning for someone who is not present. So why does he show a Heian period nobleman cuddling a cat, doting on a cat, having his servant prepare lovely shaved fish flakes for the cat, while he and the cat is smiling? I'm adorable and I know it. My theory, which you may or may not agree with, is that the young man in the picture represents the man who fell in love with the princess who had the cat on the leash. And I think this is that intermediate stage while he is cuddling the cat and thinking of her. Eventually, the couple do get it together. A child is born who everyone thinks is Genji's but really isn't. And this has a great deal to do with the plot of the last part of the book. But we will leave them at this point, just so that you know that the third princess and her cat are really central. Now, Kunisada, who attempted to do a faithful version of the story, also did an eroticized burlesque version of it as the frontispiece for an erotic book that he did. It's not explicit, and I have actually exhibited it at the MFA, so I'll show it to you. There is action, but it's cat action. And as far as the human beings are concerned, the young man is not just standing in the garden looking. He has got right up on the veranda, and his hand is kind of disappearing behind the bamboo blinds and vanishing into the young woman's clothing. So this is kind of a joke version by Kunisada. I actually, what I like about it is it provides a plausible reason for why the princess's cat was being chased by another cat. But it's a kind of joke. Now, speaking of jokes, The vast majority of pictures of the princess and her cat do not actually refer to the original tale of Genji, but to that great 19th century bestseller, Inaka Genji. The Mise Murasaki Inaka Genji, the false Murasaki's rustic Genji. This was published in installments, was a huge success. It's many things for many people, which is why it was such a bestseller. It's got action. The hero, instead of being an imperial prince, is a samurai. It's got an action plot where he searches for a lost sword and people try to assassinate him and he foils them and so forth and so on. But it also does have lots of romance. Like the original Genji, he does become involved with many women, and so there's a romantic element also. The books were illustrated by Kunisada, and part of what made the story so successful was the very imaginative illustrations showing extremely lavish costumes and furnishings. Now, it's a parody of a book that was written around the year 1000. The story is set in the 15th century, and it's written in the 19th century, and really in many ways taking place in the 19th century. The 14th century setting is kind of just a disguise. So a lot of it is total fantasy of the life of the rich and famous. But it's interesting to see how the cat incident comes over. So here's one version by Kunisada. And here, the poor cat is actually crawling up one of the pillars of the house. And so its leash is really completely pulling up the bamboo blind, and everything is revealed. And this young man is just staring in awe. Here is a different version also by Kunisada, but here, there, at least the young woman is properly hiding behind the blind in the house. Here she's right out on the veranda with her cat. No thought of concealment at all. And it goes on from there. Here we have again the man cuddling the cat, but at this point the cat is still on the leash. The woman is right there with the man and the cat. There's a very interesting article about these third princess pictures by Masako Watanabe, and her theory is that in these later versions, the cat which formerly symbolized the woman now symbolizes the man, who is sexually controlled by the woman, as the leash indicates. So once again, as with all these interpretations, you can think about whether you agree or not, and maybe you will come up with a different one, but it certainly is plausible. And Kunisada II, in a print that is in this show, he goes even further. Here, the woman is actually the one who initiates the encounter. And here, the reason is there she is looking boldly out from behind the blinds at the rather hapless-looking young man with his football, and she is sending her cat out on its leash, carrying a love letter in its little mouth. So there's been quite a twist in what this famous cat story actually symbolizes in the original version and the 19th century parody versions. Now, moving on, cats are beautiful and elegant, but they are also predators, and as they sometimes remind us, they have fangs and claws. So here is a lovely lady with her cat by Kuniyoshi. However, the cat is misbehaving, and as we know from the title, which is itai, ouch, and the cat is biting her on the chin, or at the very least licking her with its little raspy sandpaper tongue. So it's not that painful. She's smiling as she says, ouch. But this introduces us to the theme of naughty or dangerous cats. Then, of course, there are cat monsters that are big enough to prey on humans, as if we were mice or a goldfish. And the term for those monsters is nekomata. I'm translating it cat monster. The etymological origin is not certain, but one possibility, nekomata usually have forked tails, And neko, of course, is cat. One of the things that mata can mean is a fork or a split. So it may refer to the split tail. If your cat's tail suddenly forks, watch out. You are in trouble. Especially if the cat puts a towel on its head and dances. That's another bad sign. And we'll see dancing cats with towels on their heads. So these are just two examples. Another thing nekomata can do is breathe fire. So there's one breathing fire. They turn up in stories, and then some of the most gorgeous prints showing them are from kabuki plays. There was a whole lineage of kabuki plays involving cat monsters, and they're known as Tokaido Road plays. Interestingly enough, they're about people traveling on the Tokaido Road. They started in 1827. There were three men who were collectively responsible for this whole lineage of cat monster plays. First and foremost, the great actor Onoe Kikugoro III, who specialized in ghosts. He did ghosts and monsters on stage extremely well, was very famous for it. He had a playwright who worked with him and who wrote plays specifically on those kinds of topics. That was Tsuruya Namboku IV. And to make it extra special, they had a third person who worked with them who was the special effects wizard. His name was Hasegawa Kanpei. So those three men did a number of plays together. The most famous one you may have heard of, Yotsuya Kaidan, one of the most famous of all Japanese ghost stories, a young woman who is poisoned by her evil husband and then comes back and haunts him with her face all distorted by the poison. So they did that very famous play, and a few years later, they did this 1927 play about people traveling on the Tokaido Road. I won't go into detail about the plot, but I'm happy to see it's on a wonderful website that I strongly recommend, Kabuki 21. If you're at all interested in kabuki, this is a fantastic website, and they do, if you look under Okazaki no Neko, it's Okazaki Station on the Tokaido is where the cat monster was, and you can find the plot of the play. Then all of these other plays, 1835, 1847, and later, were basically rewrites. Now, the playwright said in his memoirs that there were two things that really happened, that inspired him to write about the cat monster. This, by the way, this is our rather tattered version of the print. There's a lovely one upstairs that I'm very jealous of. But here you see the cat monster, and she's wearing those Heian period robes with a multiple layers. Juni Hitoe is the name of that type of costume. And then she looks like a human being, or at least a semi-human being. She's halfway turned into a cat, but the silhouette is the silhouette of a cat that is licking the oil in the oil lamp. Actually, we learned from the play the reason the cat is interested in the oil is it's not good, proper lamp oil, it's cheap fish oil, which burns, but it's kind of smelly, but cats love it. There were two things that inspired the playwright. Apparently, as he was sitting at his desk thinking, okay, what new kind of ghost can I devise for my friend the actor to play on stage? Two things happened. His cat came into the room holding in its mouth a color print of a lady in court costume. So he thought, cats, court ladies. Somebody who looks like a court lady, but really she's a cat monster. And then the other thing that happened was that as it got dark, the maid came in to light the lamps. And she bent over the lamp to light it, and he saw her face in silhouette, rather like that. And he thought, aha, they'll learn that the lady is really a cat monster when they see the cat's silhouette in the lamp. So this was what gave him the idea, supposedly, for the big scene. Now, these two prints, we don't in Boston have any from the 1827 first production, and 1835 I'm not sure about. But in 1847, the actor retired, and he did a super special of his greatest hits, and the cat monster, of course, was one of his greatest hits. So these are from that 1847 production of the great hits. Here is the old lady who is really a cat. Now, remember I said when cats' tails fork, this is a bad sign. And if they dance around with towels on their heads, it may be when ordinary cats begin to act strangely. Well, you may have been harboring a nekomata all along, or maybe your cat is an ordinary cat, but there's a nekomata in the neighborhood and it's having a bad effect on them. So these are possibilities. They're in an old ruined temple, and actually I really wonder, the bamboo blinds are a typical symbol of an old ruined building because they're all falling down, but I wonder if there's a little bit of a kind of parodic hint of Genji's beautiful wife and her kitty and the fateful bamboo blind. The Kikugoro's performance as the cat monster was so remarkable that years later it was chosen as one of the images for this series by Kunisada, matching kabuki actors with stations of the Tokaido. So a gorgeous close-up of the white-haired monster that is half old lady and half cat. And interestingly, this print is particularly famous because it was considered at the time to be absolutely a tour de force of block carving. The very fine lines in the hair were so beautifully done that everyone really admired it. And the block carver who did it was actually only 18 at the time. So needless to say, he had an excellent career after doing something like this at a very young age. So cat monster plays continued to be produced. This is the 18th. They were rewrites, basically rewrites of the original idea. They all involve people traveling on the Tokaido Road, going to an old temple and meeting someone who turns out to be a cat monster. You'll notice that this is a black-haired cat monster. They changed the play a bit at this point to accommodate the actor. Instead of it being an old lady who turns into a monster, it's a beautiful young woman who is a dancing teacher. That's because the actor was 19 years old and gorgeous. And so that he was the lovely dancing girl who then became a cat monster. This is an extremely interesting play that either was, depending on which source you look at, either was not produced or only ran for 5 nights. I've come across both descriptions. It was suppressed because the Nabeshima family complained. Now, art lovers know the Nabeshima clan because they sponsored the making of fabulous porcelain. They were the daimyo family that controlled the area of Saga in Kyushu. There was actually a story about them, a kind of legend. You were not allowed to print scurrilous things about great families. You could not have had a printed book that said, they are haunted by a cat monster. But there were manuscript books that you could get from the lending library. The manuscript books, which were called jitsuroku, which means real history, but they're not. You could get the manuscript books, and they would tell you stories that were not permitted to be printed. There was also oral storytelling about these things. Kodan is the term for that. So this is how stories were known to the public that could not legally be printed. So everyone knew that the Nabeshima clan was supposed to be haunted by a cat monster. It was made into a kabuki play. This is actually advanced publicity. The print you're looking at is from the 6th month of 1853, and the play was not scheduled until the 9th month. And there's a terrific print upstairs that's from the 7th month. But here you see the old lady. She is the dowager, the widow of the previous lord of the clan and the mother of the current one. She's been eaten by a cat that has taken her identity. This is a painted screen with a scene from the Tales of Ise about 2 young children who play beside a well. And the painting has come to life. The painted children are dancing, but they are being controlled like puppets by these kitten spirits who clearly are somehow under the control of the monster. So it's fascinating print. The cat monster it actually has a good and virtuous motive for its evil deeds. It is taking vengeance for its master, who was a blind Go player murdered by the Nabeshima family. There was a succession dispute as to which branch of the family would take control. It was settled by a Go game. The loser didn't like the result and killed the Go master, but his cat avenged him. Now, as I said, I've heard two different versions that the play was immediately suppressed when the Nabeshimas found out about it, even though the family in the story has a different name. It's Naoshima or sometimes Narushima, but everybody knew who it really was. Another version that I found said that it actually did run for 5 days, but was then quickly shut down. So a fascinating little byway. This is an Osaka play. Again, I don't quite know what's going on, but it takes us back to that very first kabuki play of the woman turning into a cat. Here, I think there is a woman being turned into a cat. I think that's a nekomata in the background that's probably having a bad influence on her. But that is a courtesan, or the spirit of a courtesan, at the right, and then another woman turns into a butterfly. You can see how this would make a very nice stage dance with the cat woman and the butterfly woman. But once again, there is fabulous embossing, and I so covet the fur kimono with the calico cat patterns, and the obi is tied in such a way that it becomes a forked tail. Now, comical cats. And again, here's the tie that is, as you see, a nekomata. It's got the forked tail, and it's got a towel on its head. But it's from Kuniyoshi's very famous set of parody prints. This is just one of them. From the period in the 1840s during the tempo reforms, when actor prints were technically illegal. But there were many clever ways that you could get around the fact that actor prints were technically illegal. So this is not pictures of actors. Now, this is just scribblings on a storehouse wall. If they look like very recognizable caricatures of actors, well, that's just coincidence. But for some reason, I always thought that the nekomata here, this, by the way, it's from about 1848, so almost certainly that's a reference to the 1847 production when the great actor who originated the cat monster part had his big retirement gala. I always thought it looked like Nyarome, who's a late 1960s cartoon character. And of course, Kuniyoshi is, Mr. Cat Artist. I totally adore this triptych. We do not have it at the MFA, but it is upstairs, and you can study it at length. It's really cats being very funny by doing natural cat things. And then, of course, there are the silly puns that link them to the stations of the Tokaido. There are just 3 cats. Actually, we were just looking at it just now, and there's one magic cat in each sheet. Here's a cat getting ready to dance. She's got a towel in her paws, and she's about to put it over her head. Here's a cat who's got her towel on her head. I say her, they might be male cats. His or her head is dancing, and you notice the tail is forked. This cat, I think, is resting from the dance. The towel is off from the moment the tail is forked, so this cat you have to watch out for. Other than that, they're all natural cats doing natural cat things. And of course, cats can be very funny even when they are doing natural cat things. You've probably seen things like this. This is, again, the idea of the cat as a beautiful woman's pampered pet. And here you see her makeup stand. It's basically like a miniature chest of drawers where all the makeup is kept. There's a little bowl of water, and she's probably got a towel somewhere. And that is the stand for the mirror, but it's made of highly polished black lacquer, which of course reflects. And so the cat thinks it sees an interloper or a rival for its mistress's affections, but really it's hissing at itself. And cats can sometimes be actors in parodies. This is by Utamaro. Again, a very funny scene of a big sister laughing at her little brothers. But the 2 little brothers are acting out a story of a great warrior in ancient times, who was an archer. You see the little boy has his toy bow, and he's got a book tied on his head upside down to look like a warrior's ceremonial hat. But the emperor's sleep was disturbed by a terrible monster that appeared in the sky over the palace. And there it was a composite of different animals, a monkey, a tiger, a snake for a tail, and so on. It's called the Nue. So there's Kuniyoshi's rendition of the Nue. And you can see down on the ground is the great archer. The great archer shot it down, and his retainer killed it with a sword. So here the little boys are pretending to be the great archer and his retainer, and the family cat, somewhat reluctantly, has been dragooned into playing the role of the Nue monster. There is another different Nue monster parody upstairs that you can find and look at yourself, where a cat is playing the role. In that case, it's a naughty cat who has stolen a stick of dried fish from the kitchen, and the mistress has grabbed the cat and is about to smack him, but she's smiling, so I don't think she's going to hit him very hard. But he is representing the monster. So cats as actors in parodies. And then, of course, it's funniest of all when it's cats doing the parodies themselves, dressing up as human beings. Again, we only have this one, but there are 4 upstairs. They are very direct parodies of kabuki plays. I suspect those cat faces are probably parodies of kabuki actors, but I have not been able to identify ours yet. The text, it's almost impossible to translate, but it's very funny. It's all full of cat noises. Every other Japanese cats say nyan and things like that. So there are lots of cat noises, and there are lots of catty references. And again, the scene is the beautiful woman who is made to play music even by the adversaries of her lover, and she doesn't want to, so it's emotionally painful for her, but she does anyway. And it's what I said, the stinky sleeve is how can I put this delicately? What made the sleeve stinky was excrement, and I suspect a cat did something naughty. Possibly one of Kuniyoshi's cats made one of his sleeves stinky. We don't know. Now, there are a number of things upstairs, and we have a number of them too. In the Meiji period, there are lots and lots of these prints made for children. They are they're called often asobie, prints to play with. I think the modern equivalent would be children's picture books, but it's just single sheet prints. They're very, very complicated, lots of details, and I think the reason for that was to keep the kids occupied for as long as possible. Let them look at all the little details. There are all kinds of different things, but animal parodies are extremely popular, and among the animal parodies, cats are the most popular. So you see cat theaters and cat brothels and cat restaurants. And this, my favorite, which is actually on the wall in Boston now, if any of you have a chance to go and to see it, is the Cat's Hot Spring. And there is another version of it. Actually, I was thinking it was the same artist, but it's not. It is a different artist. But there's another version of it also in this exhibition. They're all pupils of Kuniyoshi who were doing this, and so I think they were stealing each other's designs or repeating their own designs, and there's a complicated history. But there the cats are, in a very uncat-like fashion, enjoying the hot water, and this is a very fancy onsen with a waterfall and so forth. What I love about it is the fact that this version is definitely a Meiji print. The fashionable gentleman outside has a Western-style umbrella. It's curved. It doesn't have straight ribs the way a Japanese umbrella would. And look at the street, and then over the gate, gas lights, the very latest in high technology. So it's still all wearing Japanese clothes, but with these new innovations coming in, even into the world of the cats.